Are you stuck in the same old routine at work? Do you find yourself hitting a creative wall, unable to see beyond your current perspective? It's time to break free and unlock the power of fresh perspectives.
David Gouthro, back with another episode of Discover Fresh Perspectives. And today I have as a guest Sandra Nomoto. Welcome, Sandra.
Thanks so much, David. Pleasure to be here.
So, Sandra, one of the things you're passionate about is veganism. And I realize I know absolutely nothing about it. I am probably misinformed about many things and have some opinions that need to be shattered. So, I'd love to just kind of see where the conversation takes us.
All right. Let's go.
So, and I don't want to assume that everyone knows what it means, what vegan means. So maybe you could just say, what's that mean? What's it mean? What does vegan mean? And what does it mean to be a vegan?
Yes. So veganism is a philosophy and a lifestyle that involves the lack of consumption of animals, as well as minimizing the exploitation of animals as much as possible. So a lot of people are probably familiar with a vegetarian diet. So that doesn't involve eating meat or seafood, but it does include byproducts such as eggs, dairy, and, honey. Whereas a vegan diet is a diet that is completely exclusive of any sort of animal products, so including those byproducts that I mentioned. But to take it even further, a lot of people think veganism is just a diet, but it's part of veganism, an important part of veganism, because, historically we've eaten animals in some form for many, many years. But the actual lifestyle or the philosophy of it is to minimize that consumption as much as possible, as well as the exploitation. So, for example, using animals in entertainment, circuses, zoos, aquariums, it even involves the reduction of that, because that involves capturing animals. And so a lot of people, there's celebrities that are always like, I'm vegan now. And that's amazing. And then they find a couple of years later, I want to go back to eating animals. I always say you should have never declared yourself as a vegan. You should have just said, I am eating 100% plant-based diet, because that's actually not the definition of veganism. When you say, okay, now I'm going back. Veganism, in my opinion, at least, doesn't involve ever going back. There's only an evolution forward, right? And being as kind to animals as we can. And so I really want to make that distinction. It's not just a diet.
It's almost like a spiritual focus, in a sense that it's all encompassing, right? It's not like a fad. It's not something you just take like you flip a switch one way and flip it the other way. It's
exactly
the lifestyle, whole way of looking at life.
Yeah, it's really a life commitment, if that's something you aspire to. And it's so interesting that you said it's a spiritual, I forgot what you said. It's a spiritual commitment, because a lot of people don't talk about that. And in fact, I'm working with a client right now. I'm helping her get in the media because she's just released her book called The Vegan Transformation in April. And she's the only, or I would say maybe not the only, but one of the few vegans who actually touch on that aspect of the fact that when you choose to make this vegan transformation, really, you then discover that there are other benefits other than, I've changed the way I've eaten. Maybe I feel a little bit healthier. There really is that mental and spiritual component to it, but you can't get there unless you've lived as a vegan for some time. I would say that.
This may be a bad comparison, but a friend of mine, a fellow I used to work with back in Toronto, studied yoga, and not just the movement of yoga, but the whole spiritual aspect of it. And it's kind of seems like it's something similar to that at the very base level, you don't eat things that have come from any sort of animal at any time. But then there's all these other layers, and my hands are going up, but it's actually layers of depth around the understanding and embracing of it.
Yeah, and yoga is such a great analogy. I'm going to start using that because absolutely you can exercise in the yogic fashion, but absolutely I've heard that, but that yoga is actually a similar thing. It's a philosophy. It's sort of lifestyle that involves diet and all these other things that I can't tell you about. So yeah, I think yoga is a great analogy for veganism.
So what I don't know if inspired is the right word. What inspired you to become vegan, or what was the path by which you adopted veganism as a way of living, as a way of life?
Yeah, it really started at this moment at the end of 2007. I had heard of the term vegan, as a child, and I thought, "Oh, wow, that seems really extreme or difficult." But in my soul, I felt that could be really the ethical the way to live. I just
Mm.
didn't know how to do it, and so it wasn't until I accidentally saw a screening of the documentary Earthlings at the end of 2007. I got invited to a screening. I didn't know what I was going to watch, and Earthlings is free to watch online now if you choose to do that. But that's really what kick things off. I saw for the first time how animals get from farm to our plate. And not only was it the documentary, but it was also the Q&A at the end where somebody asked somebody from the Vancouver Humane Society who was there, what is one thing we can do to help the animals that we've just seen? And she said, stop eating meat. It was
Oh,
just that abrupt and simple. And I thought, okay, let's start on this journey. And I always thought to myself, veganism will be the North Star. It'll be the end goal. I just don't know how long it's going to take me to get there. So it took me a course of 11 years.
wow.
First cutting out every other meat except for chicken for the first year because chicken was like the most abundant meat I was eating in my diet at the time. Then it was a year of, okay, let's eliminate chicken, try to incorporate more seafood to compensate for that. I've never been a fan of seafood or eggs. So about a year out, yeah, I actually went for many years in that fashion, only eating seafood and eggs on the weekends and during the weekdays, teaching myself how to cook either vegetarian or vegan. And then and I was a vegetarian for only a year between 2017 and 2018 because when my husband and I went on our honeymoon in New York City, I ate what I call the best seafood meal of my life at Iron Chef Morimoto's restaurant, and I said, "That's it. I'm leaving on a high note. Goodbye, seafood. It's not going to get any better than this.
Mm.
So goodbye." And then from there, I was just eating dairy. That was kind of the last food product for about a year. And then I gave that up for health reasons because, unrelated to my dietary transitions, I've always had these horrible digestive symptoms like acid
Mm.
reflux, heartburn, bloating, gas, you name it, vomiting. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And so I finally went back to my naturopath in 2018 and said, I need to get to the bottom of this. And that was the first time she had suggested, let's do a food sensitivity test. So I took that test and found out dairy was on the list among a few other things. Um, and then I did a 4-month cleanse of those, items to avoid, and found myself, yeah, I've come to the point where I think I can do this. I think I can do a vegan diet forever. So that's sort of the date that I count from, 2018. So it's been just over 7 years. And then of course, like diet is the easiest hurdle. If you choose to go this route, once you do diet, everything is easy. It's very easy to get clothes that don't involve leather or wool or down. There's
Mm.
just so many options now. Same thing with your supplements and your beauty products, like you name it, there are options for, yeah, vegan options for anything. But the biggest hurdle I would say for sure is diet because people eat 3 times a day. And so you just have to unlearn those habits and create new ones.
So I'm hoping that people that are listening are kind of getting this, that you don't decide, I'm just going to try vegan. Right? It's not like dipping your toe in the water. If it's going to work, and if you're doing it for the right reasons, it's a full bodied commit, full head, heart, spirit kind of commitment.
Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
want I want to explore a lot more about vegan and veganism and myths. But before I do that, maybe just say a little bit about your business because I know you focus on veganism. So maybe just give a little, thumbnail of what you do and how you support this issue that you're so passionate about.
Yeah, I ran a PR agency for just over 10 years and closed that the same year I went vegan. And so for
Oh,
about a year and a half, I was sort of exploring different career, paths. I didn't think I was going to stay in marketing. And then at the end of 2019, I got that booming intuitive voice when I sat down to meditate. And it said, "You're a vegan now and you'll always be a writer. So put those things together." And
huh.
so this business started because of that. Right at the start of 2020, I just threw a service page up on my personal website, which is still the site that I use now. And I started tapping into my network and asking folks, who do you know who needs a content writer or a copywriter and runs a vegan company? And that's how it kicked off. I just really wanted to use my writing skills to benefit the movement. And then because of the pandemic, I had more time on my hands. So I took courses in book editing and formatting, and that got me working with authors. And so authors are the one bucket of clients who I work with, and then vegan leaders are the other bucket. And so for vegan leaders, I can do administration, content marketing, publicity campaigns. So I brought back my skills from the PR agency, and I can help folks, vegan leaders get into vegan media because I published my book 3 years ago and did this process myself. And so I amassed um, this media list that's now over 450 contacts long. It includes vegan-friendly media, podcasts, content creators. So it
Wow.
really is focused on that market. So yeah, so there's just sort of two sides to my business, but veganism is sort of incorporated into that one half.
So I'm going to make sure that that I put the reference for your website into the program notes. And I was just glancing through it. There's so much interesting information. Like this one that I looked at was the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 on things that you could buy. And if I see a list here of 12 things where you can buy organic produce. So things like strawberries, spinach, kale, peaches, pears, nectarines, apples, grapes, bell and hot peppers, cherries, blueberries, my personal favorite, and green beans. So, try to buy organic, but then really caught my attention is that there's some other things that you say there. It's okay to not have to buy organic, like avocados, sweet corn, pineapples, onions, papayas, things like that. So it really got me thinking about these things. So I really loved your website, loved to look at, love the content. Okay, let's dive into some things that I've heard that not things that I believe myself, Sandra. Of course, I would never do that, but I've heard people say about vegans and veganism. So, and we can just if these can be distilled, it'd be great because maybe some people that are listening might push them over the edge to say, yeah, I think I really want to go this direction. So. And most of these are food related, but so vegans don't get enough protein.
Yep. All of us have heard that even before we were vegan, so that's quite common, and and it's a myth because certainly we can get our protein from meat and animal products, and most of us have grown up in this fashion thinking that those are the only sources, but certainly they're not. And so the great thing when you make this transition is you just learn where the other sources are in the plant world. And so I think tofu, other soy products, tempeh, those are maybe the most popular, but of course there's beans, lentils, um, what else?
I
Like
used
even
to love
grains, like
quinoa.
yeah, absolutely. Quinoa, like a superfood. A lot of people don't think grains and other vegetables don't have any protein. Like, obviously, they don't have as much as meat. But if you're including, if you think of that, of Canada Food Guide's plate, where they say you should have half your plate full of fruits and vegetables, and then the other half, grains, and then another source of protein, like that should be enough.
Mhm.
And so you don't need a steak or you don't need a hamburger or these things for protein. Of course, you can get protein from them, but many, many other sources in the plant world that will, yeah,
I've
make
I've
your
heard that
requirements sufficient.
that you can get enough there. So I've heard that if you eat meat, whatever your sweat gives off or whatever is more attracted to mosquitoes. So that that's what I heard anyhow. So that if you eat a lot of red meat in particular, you'll be more attracted to mosquitoes. And when I've been working up north and summer jobs way back when, like anything to not bring the hordes of mosquitoes to you, it's like
Yeah.
okay. and we can avoid that. So another one here, the assumption is that vegan diets are automatically healthy.
Oh no, absolutely not. Because we have our share of vegan junk food, and this is how we indulge. In Vancouver, there's a fast food place called Odd Burger that has, opened just this past year, and they've had franchises in other major cities across Canada, but they only arrived in Vancouver this past year. And so we have restaurants like that where we can indulge in our vegan junk food too. And so you can absolutely be a junk food vegan. I wouldn't recommend it. I would say, like, save that stuff for the weekends. But the great thing about learning to eat more plants is it kind of forces you to learn how to cook. Be- Because, you buy all this produce from the grocery store, and then unless you like to eat it raw, like you have to learn to cook it and season it. And so, as I said earlier, those years that I was still eating seafood, I was teaching myself to cook um in a vegan way. I was training myself for my future self because you just have to amass like this repertoire of recipes so that you can be a healthier vegan.
Well,
And there's some people that, they're vegan and they're whole food plant-based. So they will not touch any of the processed junk food stuff. Great. There's people who do SOS. So no salt, no oil, no sugar. That's
oh,
a whole other level. And then still further, there are people who are completely raw vegan, where there's almost no there's virtually no cooking involved. So there's all these levels where you can take veganism to. But I would say if you're balancing somewhere between whole food and junk food, you're pretty good. You're probably meeting your nutritional requirements.
well, and I guess, based on what you said just a few minutes ago, that like some grains have protein. Like if you chose not to get enough protein because you weren't eating enough of those things, that wouldn't be so healthy. So it's that whole, well-roundedness that seems to be pretty important. Okay.
Yeah.
You already dispelled the myth that veganism is just a diet. You did that brilliantly. It's much, much more than that. How about the one that you can't build muscle on a vegan diet?
Once again, that's sort of related to the protein. Like, so long as you are eating, again, like an athlete or somebody who's really into fitness, you probably need to consume a lot more protein than the average person to build that muscle. And so I would say watch The Game Changers on Netflix. That's a great documentary that includes many, many vegan athletes, and you'll see a lot of the vegan bodybuilders, and you can follow them on Instagram. I follow a lot of them just for fun. Nimai Delgado, Doms Thompson, Tori Washington, a lot of these Patrick Baboumian, who made some sort of Guinness World Record for carrying weights across a stage. Yeah, all these guys are vegan and bodybuilders, so absolutely, yeah, you can build muscle.
So you mentioned Game Changers, and the first one you said Earthlings.
Earthlings was the first documentary that I watched. And I always recommend folks, yes, it's going to be hard to watch, but it's your first into how we're using animals for various industries, not just food. So Earthlings is always the one that I recommend folks watch if you just want to get an idea of why veganism is an actual thing.
I remember watching a show, I think when I was living in Toronto many years ago, and I may get the title wrong, but something like they shoot seals, don't they? Or something like that. It was, from the East Coast and about the seal harvest and stuff like that. Uh, you see something like that and just either you don't care because you're numb or it turns you off a lot of things. And it sounds like, maybe those videos would do that. Okay, here we go. Um, Vegans are always judging non-vegans.
Oh, that's a hard one. I can't speak for all vegans, of course, but personally, yes, I judge them in my mind.
And
Because yeah, because I've been there, I didn't become a vegan until I was 36. And so I can't go around, grabbing burgers out of non-vegans' hands. Like that's not a very good way of promoting, the vegan lifestyle. I think the better approach is um yeah, just showing how much we love the lifestyle, how much we're thriving, how much, if you want to incorporate it into your business like I have, we've created business around this lifestyle and more of the benefits um, rather than getting angry at folks. I think that's a much better way to go.
So this is making me think back to I was having a conversation with a therapist and asking him when you with your clients, how do you recommend whether they should try to do a lot of couples counseling, resolve things versus just try to separate as peacefully as possible? And there's three things, only two of which I can remember. But one is when one or both of you no longer love each other, because then there's nothing to keep it going. And the other is when there's an irreconcilable clash of values. So the thing that I wonder about is, and I don't mean to trivialize it by asking it this way, but can a vegan and a non-vegan be friends, or is that such a fundamental difference in terms of looking at who I am and who you are that would make that very, very difficult?
Yes, absolutely. I think we can be friends. My husband is not vegan, and so I have animal products in my fridge currently. so, so this is a great example of us coexisting. Absolutely. What was the second part of your comment or question?
Well, I was just, can you, is that a sufficiently fundamental clash in values that you can't imagine being with that person? I think you've answered to that. Well, I'm assuming that
Yeah.
you're not planning on divorcing tomorrow and just kind of throwing the whole
No,
conversation.
yeah. I mean, it's something I definitely thought of because he knew that I wanted to be vegan before we got married. And so once, we were married and then I made the transition, of course it would be nice if he came along with me, right? It would just make meal planning a whole lot easier. But I married him for different reasons, right? For other values that he carries. And what's interesting is I never go around hoping to convert people. I just hope that a little bit of my lifestyle maybe rubs off on people so that they eat more plants and less animals in their diet. And that's happened with my husband because he discovered, there are downsides to eating red meat. It's the only source of cholesterol or meat is the only source of cholesterol that exists. You can't find it in the plant world. And so last year, he actually gave up red meat. He still eats chicken, he still eats seafood and dairy, eggs as well. But he found that, initially it was challenging, but he said, yeah, I was able to do it. And so it's sort of this thing now that he's continuing on. Um, and so I look at that as an example of yeah, he's not going to go all the way, maybe, but my influence has certainly had some sort of effect there.
So, I asked the question, do vegans, or the myth that they are always judging non-vegans. I'd also flip that around and say there's the other possibility that non-vegans judge vegans. And I guess my suggestion, based on what we're talking about, is that if whoever's listening as a vegan or as a non-vegan, the best thing to do is to ask a vegan about what it's like for him or her to be a vegan rather than just judge it. Because I think a lot of people hold judgments about that. Oh, you're better than us, and all that sort of stuff. But exercise a little bit of curiosity that he or she may not be trying to convert you. They may be quite comfortable with who they are and who you are. But if it's your discomfort with someone being a vegan, have the courage to be curious about it and to ask what it's like for him or her. How about is it more or less expensive, or is there even a cost difference when you make a choice to be vegan?
Yes, there's and this is another myth that it is more expensive because maybe you're eating more vegetables and if you're going to buy the organic, that can be expensive. Or if you're going to buy a substitute. So for example, a plant-based burger or chicken strip or something like that. Generally those are going to be more expensive than the conventional because our tax dollars and the government subsidies actually make it so. They make the meat and dairy cheaper than the plant-based version. But what I say to people is, use those products to help you transition. I certainly did for many years. But if you really want to have an effect on your budget and reduce your grocery budget, you really want to look at whole food plant-based because that's where the cheap stuff is. It's in the rice, the grains, your oats, the beans, the lentils, all that stuff you will have to cook. but those sources of protein are way cheaper than meat. And so in the long run, it can actually be uh, lower in cost than an animal fuel diet.
And as just thinking about that cooking part in this crazy world that we're in, I think it's a really good thing to take time to slow down, and cook. Like there's a friend of mine, Sivasadan Tyagarajan in Bloomington, Indiana. And when they were doing meals, it wasn't vegan, it was vegetarian, but maybe it was vegan. I don't know. But anyhow, when you had a bunch of people over for dinner, everyone got involved in making the dinner and the preparation and things like that. And rather than in a hurry to eat, it was so nice to just slow down and be able to have a conversation and enjoy the making of the food as much as the eating of the food. And I think when you have to cook things, especially from whole, you have to do that. Like it feels like it would be a good thing for someone's sense of well-being, just to slow down and not be in a rush to just eat quick and then get on to something else. So again, back to the lifestyle, not just the diet part of veganism.
Yeah, and I'm an example of someone I've had to figure out how to make cooking work for me, because I'm not going to be one of these people that ever, I think, enjoys it. Maybe baking, but yeah, there were some days when I was frantically cooking, and then I wanted to get back to work, and then and my husband was like, "Oh, you've left all these dishes in the sink. You forgot to wash them." And I thought to myself, like this system I have is not working. And so what I do now is Mondays are my day to cook. I batch cook my meals, my lunch and my dinners, and that usually lasts me throughout the week, so that I don't have to spend the rest of my days slaving away in the kitchen. I hate to say that term too, but yeah, I've made it. I've made it work for me, so that I don't have to rely on eating out at restaurants and delivery and all that. That I can still cook my meals, but I don't have to cook them every single time.
I think it reinforces the notion there's no one right way to go about doing it. Now, there's a couple of others that I've heard, and one is that and I haven't observed this myself, but I heard that all vegans are skinny.
Uh,
True or
I
false?
I don't think so. Again, just look at the bodybuilders, and certainly even I think there may be a couple of plus size models even, but yeah, we all come in different shapes and sizes. I found when I gave up meat, I lost 10 pounds right off the bat, because again, I think it was that saturated fat that's just leaving your diet. But I gained all of it back. I like to think maybe some fat, some muscle, but yeah, I gained it all back, as I progressed with my plant-based diet. So no, I would say that's absolutely not true.
Like I'm just, have this, kind of a sketch going through my head of, a scene downtown Vancouver where I live. And, people say, oh, I bet he's not a vegan, or I bet, just based on all those assumptions. Okay. Here's another, how about, concern about, children, that children can't be raised vegan. A lot of concerns around that for whatever reason. How would you comment on that?
Yeah, I would say there's plenty of vegan parents who've proved that wrong. There's a duo of moms. They have a company called Plant Based Juniors, so teaching a lot of parents how to raise their kids vegan. And let's not forget the one superfood that babies come out of the womb consuming. That's the mother's breast milk. And so that's you got that one superfood right off the bat, and then for everything else, they're plant sources for what they need.
So that's good to know, because I think a lot of people think their child is going to, not going to grow as quickly, not going to grow as well, not going to be as healthy, not the same brain development. That's just totally false. That's good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How about, what are some of your go-to vegan meals that would surprise people about how wonderful they are?
I don't know if I have anything show-stopping, but I would say whatever you eat, I can eat vegan too. And if they take too long to make, so for example, a shepherd's pie, that's got several components: the mashed potatoes, the veggies, the meat-like substance. I usually stay away from that stuff unless I'm coming to a potluck and many people are going to eat it. Same thing with a lasagna. A lot of components. I'm not going to make that during the week. But your spaghetti and your beef bolognese, make that very easily with plant-based crumbles, and then there's even vegan Parmesan cheese I could throw on top of that. Same thing with burgers. Very easy to get patties and cheese. Um, yeah, that's what I would say.
So what is a vegan dish that you'd serve to a skeptical meat lover? Like someone that figures, I'm never even going to try it. Is there anything that they would be surprised at? Like someone who's hardcore red meat, stereotypical Albertan. My apologies to my friends who are from Alberta, but what would you start with to open their mind to the possibility?
Yeah, in fact, those two dishes, there used to be a company in Vancouver. They did close down, but they were called Como Comfort Foods, and they would sell frozen versions of shepherd's pie, lasagna. They had, I think, chicken pot pie and a bunch of other things. I used to bring the shepherd's pie and the lasagna to the family dinners, and people, some people didn't know that it was a vegan version. And so they were eating the lasagna and eating and eating, eating, and then it just happened to be mentioned that that wasn't meat, and they could not believe it.
Huh.
And so I like it when that happens. I don't even need to like come and say I've arrived. The vegan dishes are here. I just bring what I bring, and if people like it, great. And if they don't, there's usually other dishes they can eat. So that's kind of that's my style.
So you're, out there working with people that are trying to promote veganism and provide leadership in that area. What's one common myth about veganism you wish people would just stop repeating? Like it really blocks their willingness to consider veganism. Is there a sort of a big bad myth about veganism? Like, would you just stop saying that sort of thing?
Yeah, I would say the health aspect is probably the biggest one of all. Like, yeah, the protein and all these other minerals that people think they can't get. I think for the most part, we've dispelled that with, documentaries like The Game Changers and What the Health, Forks Over Knives. I think that's slowly starting to fizzle away, but I do think there is a prevailing idea that if you become vegan, you will automatically just be an angry vegan. And I don't think that's true.
Huh.
Because the activists have done such a good job of protesting and rescuing animals, and like they're putting their lives on the line, by getting arrested and things like this. And of course, we have the tools that we didn't have maybe 50 years ago of spreading videos on the internet. And so a lot of it might be gruesome because you're seeing how the animals get killed in the industry. You're seeing angry vegans protesting. And so I think there is that myth that like, oh, like I don't want to do this because I'll become one of these people. And that's absolutely not true. I think everybody can do it in their own way. And I even know some folks who don't want to go around saying that they're vegan. I don't agree with that because I don't think it's helping the movement. But yeah, I'm an example of it. I choose to do it with my skills in my business
Mhm.
by helping leaders, grow their businesses. That's how I choose to do it. I published a book, on vegan marketing. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
huh.
and I think there are just different ways that you can use your natural talents and skills to promote the movement. And so, absolutely, I don't. You can be an agri vegan if you want. That's your, uh, yeah, you can if you want, but I don't think you have to.
So I found this very interesting, and I guess I've had a number of guests for whom the environment and the planet have been very, very important. So what's the intersection, or the Venn diagram, the overlap between veganism and environmentalism?
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's the use of resources. So many people don't know, and again, I don't know the exact statistic, but it's
Mhm.
definitely at least a half, maybe up to two-thirds of land is being used for animal agriculture. And so that's a huge amount of resources. You can even think of it on a social level. A lot of these resources that we're feeding to animals are being fed to them for food instead of being fed to humans. So there's also that. Air pollution. So a lot of people don't know that animal agriculture actually emits more greenhouse gases than all transportation sources combined.
Wow.
So it's
Wow.
there's the land, there's the air, and then of course there's the ocean. So not only are we pulling so much marine life out of the oceans that they've predicted we will have fishless oceans by 2050, but there's also the think of the waste. Animals are not going to the bathroom like we do. They just go in lagoons or where they go, and all of that is going to the oceans and decimating the marine life that are in the ocean. So it's a land, air, ocean, like it's all resources really that are being affected by the scale of animal agriculture that we're at now. So yeah, so if you're an environmentalist, I wouldn't go around preaching that unless, you eat a majority plant-based diet. Because
Very interesting.
you're contributing to the problem if you're still, eating as an omnivore.
So I know that I am not going to make the commitment to veganism. Nevertheless, I think there's a lot of the principles and underlying values of veganism that anyone can start to embrace to move them from where they are to a better place that's healthier for them and healthier for the planet. So maybe committing to be a vegan is an either or, but the principles of veganism I think can apply to anybody, just like, a religion or any of the spiritual discipline or whatever. You can embrace elements of it that will make things better. And if you're doing nothing, you're either keeping things the same or letting them get worse, whether it's about the environment, your health, or whatever. So I would like to thank you very much for taking the time to be with me here today and to let me explore and poke and prod and learn. And it's been great. Thank you so very much. So, I've been here today with Sandra Nomoto, and I for sure will put her contact information, her website, a couple of the movies that she recommended, documentaries in the program notes. So again, Sandra, thank you so very much.
You're so very welcome, David. And thank you for this conversation. I enjoyed it.
So David Gouthro once again, and still discover fresh perspectives. Come on back next week and let's discover some more.
Subscribe now because on Fresh Perspectives, every episode is an opportunity to explore new horizons and redefine what's achievable.